Okay, it's time to play a new game. It's called What's Going On with QAnon? And I started to watch a new video someone made about QAnon, and I fast forwarded it. I think I watched it for 3 minutes. Nothing is going on with QAnon, and people who are following QAnon are wasting their time? Question mark. It's just that it seems to me that QAnon is a Republican branch that tries to go after the Democrats using the term corruption. But everyone knows that the Republicans are the same as the Democrats, totally the same when it comes to corruption. So whatever QAnon is all about, it's been years and nothing has happened with it at all. So I'm going to say it's very poor entertainment, QAnon. And it sounded wonderful, when they first made the first video on it. But nothing transpired, and no one expects anything to ever transpire because it's Democrats investigating Republicans, investigating Democrats, and etc., etc. And it's always the same thing that, you can get lost in hours and hours of commentary on what they say is happening, but nothing ever really happens. No one ever goes to Guantanamo Bay to see if they've ever arrested anybody. MAGA, whatever that was, something about making more generous arrests. Never happened, never happened, never happened. And as for the trillions of dollars that go to the military-industrial complex to build new secret this, that, and the next thing, yes, probably, although, I haven't seen them fly over. Oh, I know, it's because they've got cloaking devices on them. Or, there's really nothing where I live for any reason for them to fly over anyway. To show off these high-tech tools, they're too busy fighting the Romulans out in Betelgeuse or some other star system. That story is the story of the secret space program that tries to explain what happened to trillions of dollars over the decades that went to the military, and what did we get for it? Well, people are imagining that there's a secret space force with super advanced technologies, such as cloaking, like the cloaking devices were shown to us in the late 1960s on the original Star Trek. I'm having tea. And, the idea is that there's a breakaway society run by the corporations that run Earth, and they took all the smartest, brightest, and best and kidnapped them and took them off planet, and they have colonies all over the place, but they don't tell us because we're the dumb ones that were left behind. Strangely, this sounds like the same story that the religionists tell, that is, of the rapture, where all the good people get beamed up and out of planet Earth, leaving all the bad guys behind. You see the parallel between the religionist and the, I don't know what you call that one. It's kind of the sci-fi version of, where did all the money go? But it's true. Even if you think of, the military certainly got unbelievable amounts of money in the spy department, the CIA. And, that's just the United States. Think about how much trillions of dollars were spent by the Russians or the British. The British were kind of more thrifty because they were a smaller country, but somehow they managed to get nuclear submarines that have got nuclear missiles on them that, you can fire at the Russians, even though they're a relatively small country. So, you mean every country seems to spend a vast fortune on gadgets to fight wars or to spy on people. And the idea of having a colony somewhere else where you can, well, that's the best idea. I mean, once they start snooping around your, I don't know which island they're using in the Caribbean to hide their trillions in, foreign branches of the Royal Bank of Canada. That's what they do, actually. But, these people are imagining that there are off-planet branches of the Royal Bank of Canada where you can deposit your extra trillions that you took out of your job as a CIA bagman. So the CIA got a black budget of, I don't know, $500 billion. You took your cut of 3% and you put it in the Royal Bank of Canada's branch on one of the moons of Jupiter. Is it so far-fetched? Well, people want you to believe this. They want you to believe that the technology does exist for space flight and for building domed cities on asteroids and things, but it's being hidden from us. And then they give us sneak ideas that there's huge underground cities where the elite can go in the event of mass zombies attacking. And no one really believes it because it just seems like an awful lot of work and very expensive. But then last week I saw the city of Toronto is planning on building a subway tunnel. And they showed a very brief 10-second clip of one of the machines that digs subway tunnels. And lo and behold, they showed some of the tunnels that were dug by these kind of machines. And I looked at them, and they're huge caverns. And I said, well, if they've been manufacturing these kind of tunnel borer machines, and they set them to work, they could build enormous underground cities. No problem whatsoever. These machines have been around for a very long time. You remember they did build a tunnel between France and England decades ago using these machines. That was, commercial use. And everyone knows that the military gets these commercial technologies before the general population has use of these things. So, is it possible that these tunnel borer machines started building in the 1940s? Yes, they were building underground bunkers in World War II. So, it only goes to further the plot that there are underground cities that are off limits to you and I because we have no value to the entertainment military industrial complex at all. And, do you really want to live in an underground city when the above ground cities are available and they've got free sunshine and air? So, if you want to learn about this so-called secret space program, well, okay, the first thing you need to know is how did it all start? During World War II, Nazi Germany was working on very dangerous technology, experimental technology. They had enormous amount of slave labor to build the things needed in order to work on this technological development. And it was highly radioactive and very dangerous. And they didn't care because they were using slaves. And if the slaves died, they didn't care. They just went and got more. This is the Nazi philosophy. We must have advancement to go in our report for Adolf Hitler. And if it means, like 20,000 slaves died, then that's going to make the report even better. Adolf will like that. So that's the way they worked. But they were working on anti-gravity technology. And the basic idea was they were going to take some isotope of mercury, red mercury perhaps, and they were going to ionize it, turn it into a plasma, and spin the plasma at very high speed, like a centrifuge. And the idea was somehow this was going to distort gravity fields and minimize gravity, at least minimize it and possibly eliminate it altogether. Is this a warp field like on Star Trek? I don't know. No one ever asked the question. But the idea is that they were working on this towards the end of the Second World War, and then they were losing the Second World War. So what they did is they took all of this technology as far as it was going, loaded it onto large transport ships, and they sent it to Antarctica, where they had another secret base. And then they continued to work on this technology in their secret Antarctic bases. Now, they had these Antarctic bases because the Germans in the Second World War didn't have much of a surface navy compared to the United States and Great Britain and Canada. They had huge navies. But the Germans had submarines. And they had some enormous submarines. They were called something like mother ships. I don't think that's the exact name, but it was basically a mother of submarines, a huge supply submarine. So if they had regular size submarines that were used for attacking enemy shipping, they had these giant supply submarines so that they could send the whole pack of submarines to the west coast of the United States, off of Los Angeles or down, off Mexico. And these enormous submarines could resupply the smaller submarines, and they could attack Los Angeles. And the idea then is, well, what did they do? Well, they perfected this anti-gravity. And where did they want to go? Well, they wanted to fly around the planet, and then they realized, well, what if we wanted to go to the moon? What did they do? Well, according to the story, they took some of these submarines, and you'll remember the submarine goes underneath the ocean. It's watertight. So the air inside is protected. It doesn't leak out. It's all sealed, hermetically sealed with, those watertight doors. And they thought, well, we're just going to install an anti-gravity machine onto the submarine. And it doesn't matter how many tons of steel the submarine's made of because we have anti-gravity and it doesn't matter. So they fired up the anti-gravity machine and they floated the submarine out of the water into the air and out into space where they could send it to the moon. Okay, so you had to have anti-gravity to counteract the effect of gravity, but you still need to apply some force on the submarine to get it up to a good speed to get it to the moon. Because, those are the two biggest problems, the vast distance between Earth and the moon and Earth's gravity that you have to escape from. So NASA did it in the late 1960s using very high-powered rockets, enormous rockets, the Saturn V, for example. You can look it up. Enormous rockets and incredible thrust. And that's how they supposedly went to the moon. But this other way, you counteracted the gravity so you could basically float out of the atmosphere and into space. But you'd still have to have something to get you to the moon, because otherwise, once you floated out of Earth, the Earth atmosphere, you would just be, basically orbiting the Earth. So you'd need something to move you from the outer atmosphere of Earth to the moon. Well, would they have used rockets? The problem with rockets is that you have to have an enormous amount of rocket fuel, which has to be brought with you in a tank. So, I mean, and then these submarines, the regular submarines were really not that big. They weren't designed to go for more than, I don't know, maybe a few months maximum on one of their sorties. So you could go for quite a while. But if you had to take the tanks that were used to store, well, on a submarine, you have tanks that store the diesel fuel, because in the first submarines were using diesel fuel to power themselves. So, did you need diesel fuel if you had anti-gravity? You might still need some diesel fuel to run a generator for electricity, unless your anti-gravity thing. Well, I don't know. That's a good question, and so I think you need some sort of electrical generation. So I'm going to say you're still going to need some diesel fuel, but there's lots of other tanks on a submarine that they use. Sometimes they fill them with seawater, so you sink, and sometimes they blow it out and put air in them so you float. So those tanks could be repurposed, and you could you need fresh water if you're going to the moon, and you need a lot of compressed air because you got a long way to go. Some of the air could be reprocessed to take the carbon dioxide out of it, but people still do burn up some of the oxygen, and so you're going to need extra oxygen. And you're going to need food. And I don't know how fast you're going to be able to get from Earth to the moon. And it's a very long way. So, it's pretty much like you're going to need something like rockets to get you up to a high speed to get you from here to the moon. Unless they didn't somehow get some kind of... Well, warp drive was basically... creating a field effect around your ship, and they never really explained how the warp drive in Star Trek worked. You just turn it on, you say warp factor 2, and something happens. Impulse power is basically rocketry. It's basically, advanced rocketry. Instead of using chemicals to burn and rocket energy, you could use ion drive as an impulse engine. And then basically what you do is you take ions, which are charged particles, and put them in a magnetic field, and the opposites oppose one another, and you can fire the ions out one end of your rocket ship, and that, using Newton's law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you're firing ions out the back of the ass side of your spaceship will go forward. So, I mean, that's one possible thing. There's that possibly could use a lot less. I think it uses a great deal less volume of whatever you're using as your ions than if you were to burn rocket fuel. So you could really reduce the amount of fuel you need if you went to ion drive. And I think ion drive is available already. I think we can use ion drives now. And warp drive, if it's real, I think ion drive, you could probably find it on the internet. I'm sure I did when I looked about 5 years ago. Ion drive can be done in a lab. So that's available. And warp drive, if it's available, I don't know. But ion drive, you could do it. So you could get yourself with anti-gravity out to the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, fire up your ion drive, and get your submarine to go from Earth to the moon. You could do it today. Did they have ion drive in the 1940s? I don't know. I don't know. But they do say that the Germans went to the moon around World War II. So you have to fill in the blanks. And if they had this anti-gravity, where did they get this idea from? Extraterrestrials. The story is that they had a group known as, I don't know how you pronounce it in English, Thule, Thule,